What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in to talk about the future of Destiny 2. Of course, we've heard quite a lot of stuff about how Bungie are going to be changing things over the next few months. And right now, at a time where a good portion of the community is generally frustrated with the game, Bungie have been feeding us with bits of info about Season 11 and Year 4, and they're talking a lot about fall expansion changes, but also stuff that they're going to do well into Year 4. And so if you want a bit of a summary of what to expect and when, then I thought it would be cool to round up everything we can expect in the form of systematic changes in the next few months. And so I hope you guys do find the video useful. It's even a pretty good recap for me because they've discussed so many different things with so many different timelines. And of course we're very close now to the start of Season 11, so we're going to cover how that's changing in a moment, but first, we have a very significant list of new and reworked systems coming in the fall of this year, where we'll likely see the arrival of the terrifying pyramid ship. So firstly, when we're running that new DLC content, we'll be making season progress in some different ways as Bungie move away from bounties. So as early as Season 12, Bungie are looking to introduce a system that replaces weekly bounties and a kind of challenge mechanism or series of objectives provided to players that grant a lot of season rank progress. And the idea is that we can do this stuff as we play through various different types of content, and it's a bit more organic than having to go and pick up various different bounties and complete them, right? But these are account scoped objectives, so not necessarily something you have to complete on a particular character or even on every character, but also that they're going to be non-expiring, will grant more XP than the weekly bounties they're actually replacing. And I think that will be a welcome shift in how we're earning XP, but it's worth noting that bounties are still going to be a thing, and the idea is that bounties are used as more of a kind of optional, where you can progress even faster, get more powerful drops, and upgrades on things like the artifact. As well as us having a different way to progress with XP, Bungie are going to be adding a seasonal armor pursuit every 3 months inside of Year 4. So each season, they've said that they'll deliver an aspirational pursuit for armor, and this armor will come from activities, not the season pass or Eververse. And they say an example of this is removing a set of armor designed for Eververse and itemizing it into an aspirational activity instead. And so that will be an additional layer of pursuit to go after each season. And then importantly, they're essentially making a bit of a promise here as opposed to a kind of patch note, but going forward, aspirational activities will reward players with power, items, and vanity. That will include adept weapons for Trials of Osiris, and trials getting brand new armor, so basically stuff that isn't repriced, and there will also be other accessories and weapons in Season 13, so the minor caveat that there is a bit of an extra weight there, and the Trials is going to get new armor every single year, but also Destiny's next raid will have brand new armor, weapons, and exotic accessories to pursue, and so of course that could be exotic sparrows, ships, but they're also promising brand new, not reskinned armor or anything like that, and of course this is a raid that we're very likely to get in September, and so those are going to be pretty important in terms of rewards in the game, but also Bungie have said they're vowing to no longer sell ships, sparrows, ghost shells, or other ornaments, including armor, in Eververse that are visually based on themes from aspirational activities. And so we should not be seeing a pyramid ship, or anything like that, at least not one that you buy in Eververse. And then they're also going to add more account-specific paths to earning currencies like Bright Dust, and improving the Bright Engram to where it will only include Eververse items from the 3 seasons prior. So of course they have spoken about progression, new pursuits that we'll be getting every season, and then making aspirational activities and rewards much better, as well as a few promises about Eververse. Now outside of those changes coming in Season 12, we do also have the inclusion of max power levels being applied to gear, or sunsetting, which is an equally common term for what's coming up for our legendary rewards. So each legendary weapon and piece of armor is going to have a max power level that it can reach via infusion. This will not include exotics, and the max power level for the items will be set at the player's power cap attainable 3 seasons after its release. And that essentially means, if looking back at this past year, you acquired some armor when Shadowkeep dropped in Season of Undying, you'd still be able to infuse it all the way up to the most relevant power levels until the final season of that year, but after that, the power relevancy of gear will start to drop off. We'll still be able to equip and use any piece of gear, and of course there is standard Crucible, so you could still take Recluse into the Crucible and absolutely rip folks up with it, but Iron Banner or Trials, or indeed the Raid, and that'll no longer be an option because of power. And that's essentially how that's going to work for all legendary gear in the game. And basically it does mean that we'll need to acquire new pieces of relevant gear as time passes by. And there are definitely mixed opinions on that subject, so give us your thoughts about them down below. However, here, Bungie have given us a bunch of details about changes that are coming later in Year 4, and these could be during Season 13, 14, or even beyond that, so bear that in mind, but Bungie are going to be adding a transmogrification feature for Destiny 2. It allows players to turn their armor into universal ornaments, and they plan to allow players to do this with in-game efforts, or with silver. But in terms of exactly when we're going to get that, we don't have a precise date just yet. It's probably going to be after the middle of Year 4 by the looks of things. However, a positive change for Season 13, or at least one that Bungie are hoping to get by Season 13, is that essentially we'll have a new tab in the UI where we can pick up bounties from any of the vendors in the game. So instead of having to run around to various different locations on social spaces, we'll simply be able to acquire them while we float in orbit. Again though, that's going to be a Season 13 thing, so essentially in the winter of this year. And otherwise in Year 4, Bungie have said that activities and their rewards will still be available for an entire year, so we won't be seeing a situation where they're taken away at the end of every season. However, it's still possible, and of course pretty likely, that those activities would then be taken away, or some of them would be taken away at the end of that full year instead. But of course the one positive there is that they would be presumably replaced with a bunch of much more exciting brand new stuff as part of a fall expansion. And so it's good to get a bit of an idea of how those changes will work. Of course, when we get This Week at Bungie, we get a lot of context and insight from developers, but that also means a lot of words, and it can be hard to kind of narrow down what the actual changes will be. And so that's what we know about stuff coming in Season 12, 13, and potentially beyond. But of course, Season 11 is only a few weeks away. They did announce some very minor changes, so they're adjusting expiration timers on bounties, for example, and we're less likely for bounties to go away and expire while we're still working on them, maybe if we don't log in for a day or something like that. But also, in Season 11, the rewards for the season are going to drop from completing core activities, so that'll be Strikes, Crucible, and Gambit, as well as nearly every other major featured activity in the game. Also though, Bungie are going to feature returning weapons, so some stuff from Undying, Dawn, and Season of the Worthy, for a total of 6 weapons that are free for all players to acquire. And instead of us having weapon bounties or a loot table associated specifically to an activity, like the Sundial for example, Bungie have revealed that we'll get a new redacted engram that contains the majority of the rewards for the season. These are going to drop in a whole series of different activities, including Year 1 stuff like EP, but also Blindwell, Menagerie, Reckoning Forges, and more. And so it should make those activities a little bit more relevant. And once we have those engrams, we can spend a new seasonal currency to influence the type of loot that we'll get. So the engram is going to have 3 focusing categories available for all players, but for Season Pass owners, there will be 15 focusing categories. And what these focusing categories do is essentially allow you to open the engram up and point it in a specific direction in terms of what type of loot you want to get. So 2 examples include Season 11 armor focusing, and this will reduce the number of rewards in the engram so that it only contains Season 11 armor. But there's also previous season weapon focusing, and that will mean that the reward you get will be one of the 6 reprised weapons from previous seasons that we just touched on. And so potentially we're going to see other categories like armor pieces rolled with a particularly high stat. You could see a similar thing for weapons, or of course, an option to increase the chance of getting an item from a certain loot pool, maybe the new DLC activity or something. Obviously there will be a series of different categories, but because we're earning those engrams in a lot of different activities, actually you could get on and just decide to play Menagerie, Crucible, Strikes, and a whole variety of different things, but still walk out of the game with just as many rewards as if you focused on playing brand new activities. In fact, based on how the past couple of seasons have gone, you're probably more likely to walk away with more loot than you would currently, so it sounds like it could be pretty awesome. And then as Bungie have said, they are going to be limiting and featuring certain weapons in the Legendary World pool for every season. And so we can see right here a list of all the stuff that's going to be featured in Season 11, and the World pool specifically is separate from the redacted engram that we just mentioned. And so those are Season 11 changes specifically versus how things currently work. Of course, we don't know exactly what the theme is going to be, or what the featured pieces of content, new loot like exotics, power levels and all that kind of stuff. We don't know exactly what they're going to look like, but those are going to be announced probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And so hopefully the changes are actually happening alongside a reasonable content drop. Something worth listing separately would be the changes coming for Trials of Osiris across Season 11 and 12. So in Season 11, Bungie say they're adjusting the token payout milestones in 3, 5, and 7 wins to give larger chunks of tokens, essentially to make farming early games a little bit less appealing. They're also going to be adding masterworking and infusion materials from those different win payout levels in Season 11, so that'll be a positive as well. And they did say they're going to create a weekly bounty that encourages participation each weekend, but doesn't require match wins. And when you claim the bounty, it gives you the equivalent rewards of the 3 win package for the week. And the only thing we haven't really touched on that we already know about in this video is a giant list of weapon tuning changes that are happening across Season 11 and 12. So Bungie mentioned a few days ago adjustments to various perks, the introduction of new perks, archetype changes, buffs, and some nerfs. And some are happening next month in June, but others will happen in the fall with the big expansion. So I will link a video down below if you want the very specifics on what the weapon changes are going to look like. But otherwise, for the moment, until we actually get more of a reveal for the June season, or indeed the September expansion, or the fall expansion, should we say, then yeah, this gives us at least a good picture of how the game is going to change in terms of systems. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this one, and once again, give us any of your thoughts down below. It will be especially nice to get a look at new stuff that we're going to be doing, right? That's a pretty important element. And as Bungie have done in previous seasons, they've been kind of prepping us up with how the systems are going to change first, and then revealing the meat of the content, what the new themes will be, and letting us get a bit of a taste of what's on the way. So be sure to stay tuned here and I will keep you posted when we get those reveals. But once again, give us your thoughts in the comment section, and if you have enjoyed the video, a rating down below really helps me out. But for today guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and whatever you get up to, I hope you have an awesome day.